The vast darkness of space stretched endlessly around the small human exploration vessel, Aurora. Stars flickered like distant fires, and the silence between them pressed against the ship as if the void itself were watching. Captain Elias Vorn stood at the observation deck, his hands resting lightly on the railing. His eyes scanned the endless expanse, searching for the faint shimmer of the Zalan expanse, a region of space that human maps barely touched. Reports spoke of strange civilizations, ancient and proud, whose technology rivaled anything Earth had achieved. Some stories were frightening, others hopeful, but Elias felt a mix of curiosity and duty. He had always believed humans could face any challenge if they approached it with patience, intelligence, and courage. The ship's AI, a calm voice in the background, interrupted his thoughts. "Captain, sensors are detecting a habitable world ahead. Atmospheric readings are stable, and there are signs of intelligent life structures on the surface." Designation: Ilari Prime. Each human on board understood the weight of this mission. First contact with a civilization unlike humanity's own could either open new paths for cooperation or spark conflict. Elias knew they had to be careful. Humans were clever, but they were also unpredictable. So were aliens. When the shuttle detached and descended through the atmosphere, the landscape below unfolded like a painting from another world. Vast cities rose from forests of shimmering silver trees. Towers of crystal-like metal spiraled toward the sky. The air shimmered with a strange, almost musical resonance. The Ilari, the beings who lived here, were unlike anything humans had imagined. They moved gracefully, their limbs elongated but delicate. Their eyes were large, reflecting light in a way that made them seem luminous. As the shuttle touched down, Elias felt a mixture of awe and caution. This world was beautiful, but it was also unknown. The humans stepped onto the alien soil carefully. The air was breathable but carried a subtle, electric scent that made their skin tingle. Ahead, a commotion caught their attention. An Ilari woman knelt on the ground, her long fingers brushing against the earth as she tried to soothe a child. The infant's cries pierced the quiet, echoing unnaturally across the alien structures. It was a sound that tugged at something deep in Elias. Humans, he knew, had a unique ability to sense emotion, even across species. And right now, this child was frightened and the mother seemed helpless. Elias stepped forward slowly, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "We don't mean any harm," he said softly. The Ilari woman glanced at him, her large eyes wide, and her voice trembled as she spoke in a language the translator struggled to render. The child continued to cry. Something in Elias shifted. He remembered his own niece back on Earth, whose tears he had soothed when nothing else worked. It was not just knowledge or technology, it was patience, empathy, and the willingness to connect. He crouched slightly, mirroring the posture of the alien mother, and spoke in calm tones, letting the translator device render it as best it could. The child paused slightly, eyes wide and suspicious. Elias moved slowly, his hands open and steady, showing no threat. He reached into his bag and took a small, reflective device, a human toy that shimmered and spun in the sunlight. With gentle movements, he tilted it so that the light danced across the ground. The child's eyes followed, curiosity beginning to replace fear. For minutes that felt like hours, Elias continued, letting the child explore the light. He mirrored its movements, clapped softly, and made gentle sounds that were universal across species: play, curiosity, and safety. Slowly, the crying stopped. The child's wails became hiccups, and eventually the infant blinked up at Elias with a soft, uncertain trust. The Ilari mother exhaled a sound that translated roughly to peace. She reached for her child, who now clung to her with a quiet trust that had not existed before. Elias straightened, allowing himself a small, proud smile. It was a simple act, but he knew the significance. Among the Ilari, calming a child was no small thing. It was a symbol of understanding, empathy, and moral clarity. Only beings of exceptional perception were said to accomplish it. From a distance, a tall figure observed. She moved with authority, her presence commanding but serene. The Elari queen, ruler of this civilization, watched as a human, so far removed from their culture, connected with her child in a way no Elari had attempted. Her luminous eyes narrowed in curiosity. She had heard stories of humans, creatures of chaos and genius in equal measure, but this act showed something different, something rare. Elias noticed her then, standing among the silver columns of the city. He bowed slightly, a human gesture of respect. The queen inclined her head subtly, a quiet acknowledgement that carried weight far beyond any words. He felt a strange mix of apprehension and opportunity. The moment had shifted. This encounter was no longer just about first contact. It was about trust and perhaps the beginning of something larger. The crew gathered behind Elias, unsure how to proceed. Mara whispered, "Captain, the Queen is approaching. Should we stand down? We are guests here and she is in control. Observe, learn, and respect. That is our strength." Then she spoke, her voice like music carried over wind, translated by the device. "You have done what few could. You have calmed what was feared. You have shown understanding." She knelt slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement that carried centuries of tradition. "Then you are unlike many who have come before. Your people may yet learn the ways of honor." Humans were strange, unpredictable, and yet capable of actions that resonated across barriers of language and species. Elias understood then why humans had survived so far in the galaxy. Not just because of strength or technology, but because of the ability to connect, to inspire trust, and to act with courage and empathy. The queen finally rose, her attention returning to her child. Elias stepped back, giving her space, yet he felt the weight of the moment. This simple act, a child calmed by an alien human, was the beginning of a larger story, one that could redefine humanity's place in the galaxy. Mara whispered again, "Captain, she seems to be inviting us in. What now?" Carefully, and we learn, this is only the first step. And the child, once crying and frightened, now peered curiously at him, a tiny hand brushing against his arm as though granting quiet approval. Elias thought of Earth, of the human children he had known, the trust they placed in him, and the challenges they had overcome. Humans were fragile, yes, but in their empathy and courage, they held a power unmatched in the galaxy. Here on Elari Prime, that power would be tested and recognized. The Queen led them to a grand hall, its walls shimmering with alien inscriptions and soft light. The child remained close to her side, watching Elias with wide eyes, curiosity mixed with trust. He knelt slightly again, a gesture of respect, and the Queen observed him closely. There was something in her luminous gaze that said she had made a decision, though its full meaning remained unknown. The hall fell silent as the Queen addressed her attendants and the humans. "He has shown what is rare among strangers. This human is different. Let him walk among us, not as a guest, but as one whose intentions may yet shape our future." This was more than a diplomatic gesture. It was acknowledgement. It was trust. And in that moment he understood a truth he had always believed. Humanity's strength was not only in power or intelligence, but in courage, compassion, and the ability to connect across any boundary. As the Queen guided them deeper into the hall, Elias glanced back at his crew. Their expressions mirrored his own, a mix of wonder, respect, and anticipation. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and mysteries, but here they had seen a glimpse of something extraordinary. A bridge had been formed, fragile yet unbreakable, between human courage and alien tradition, and the story of that bridge had only just begun. Elias walked forward with steady steps, ready to face whatever trials awaited, guided by empathy, intuition, and the belief that humanity could rise to meet even the most alien of challenges. Elias felt the weight of the Queen's words as he stepped deeper into the grand hall. The shimmering walls reflected his own uncertain reflection, and yet there was a strange clarity in the way the Elari observed him. Each step echoed softly, not against stone, but against a material that seemed to hum with life. He could feel it, faintly vibrating beneath his boots, as if the building itself was aware of the new presence in its midst. The queen led them past corridors filled with tall, luminous pillars that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her movements. Elari attendants followed silently, their eyes trained on Elias as though measuring his worth with every glance. The child, once crying, now trailed closely behind the queen, peering curiously at Elias. There was a quiet trust between them, a fragile bond that had formed in the simplest of gestures, and it spoke volumes to Elias about the nature of this species. Humans could connect, yes, but here he saw a society that recognized connection as sacred. The queen finally stopped at a vast chamber, its ceiling arched high above, woven with light like the morning sun reflected in water. In the center stood a platform, adorned with symbols and inscriptions that Elias could not decipher, but which seemed to radiate significance. The queen gestured toward it, and a murmur ran through the attendants. Elias understood that they were witnessing a formal ceremony. This was no ordinary reception for strangers. This was recognition and perhaps judgment. Elias nodded slightly to the queen. "I understand. We will follow your guidance." He's not just a visitor. He's becoming part of their society, even if just for a moment. Elias understood that her words were both a challenge and an invitation. In their culture, calming a child was only the beginning. Now they wanted to see how he would navigate the larger complexities of Elari society. He stepped forward, choosing his posture carefully. Humans often relied on gestures, eye contact, and honesty to communicate trust. Here, every movement mattered even more. The queen's attendants watched closely, their expressions neutral but alert. Elias remembered his training, his years of understanding human behavior, and he adapted it instinctively to the alien environment. Every step was deliberate, every tone measured. Over the next hours, he was guided through a series of observations and interactions. The Elari demonstrated their culture through rituals, displays of agility, and subtle forms of communication that blended movement and light. Elias realized that their society valued perception as highly as strength, intuition as highly as logic. The human ability to improvise, to respond without pre-programmed instructions, was being tested in the most subtle ways. At one point, an Elari scholar approached, carrying a device that emitted patterns of light and sound. It was clearly some form of communication or puzzle, but its purpose was unfamiliar. The scholar gestured for Elias to interact. He paused, observing the patterns, then began to respond. Slowly at first, he mimicked the movements, listened to the rhythm, and adjusted his own actions in a way that created harmony between the human and alien system. The child watched with fascination, occasionally pointing at a pattern, and Elias instinctively responded, aligning his movements with the infant's gestures. The queen's eyes widened slightly. She did not speak, but her approval was clear in the subtle pulse of the hall's energy. Humans, she realized, could not only understand but also harmonize with the Elari in ways that no other species had managed. As the day progressed, Elias learned more about Elari politics and society. There were factions within the court, some skeptical of humans, others cautiously curious. One elder approached, his eyes narrowing as he studied Elias. "Why should we trust you?" the translator rendered his words. "You are a stranger from a world unknown. You have calmed a child, but can you understand the needs of an entire civilization? And I can act with empathy and reason. I can help when others may not, because that is what humans do. We see problems and we try to solve them, even when the solutions are difficult." A section of the city had been selected where energy fields and environmental systems needed human interpretation. A minor fluctuation in the city's power network had caused unease among the attendants, and the queen wanted to see how Elias would respond. Elias studied the panels, devices, and glowing conduits. He had no formal training in alien engineering, but humans were clever problem solvers. He relied on observation, pattern recognition, and logical deduction, combined with intuition honed over years of leadership. Slowly, he traced the source of the disturbance, a misaligned energy pulse that could have grown unstable. Carefully, he adjusted the controls, matching the alien patterns with his human understanding of energy flow and feedback loops. A soft hum resonated through the chamber, and the lights stabilized. The attendants murmured approval, and the queen nodded. Elias had not only solved the problem but had done so in a way that respected the integrity of the Elari systems. The queen then turned to her child, who giggled softly and reached toward Elias. The gesture, simple as it was, carried enormous weight. Trust had been extended beyond protocol, beyond ceremony, to a human who had proven his understanding through action. Later, as the humans were escorted to their quarters, Elias spoke quietly to his crew. This is more than diplomacy. We are learning from them as much as they are learning from us. This is how humanity survives, not just by strength, but by curiosity, empathy, and courage. He knew this was only the beginning. Trust could be fragile. Misunderstanding could ignite conflict faster than any weapon. But for now, they had a foothold, a chance to prove that humanity could rise to meet even the most alien challenges. During the evening, the queen requested a private audience with Elias. He entered her chamber, the soft glow of the city lighting casting long shadows across the floor. She sat, her posture regal yet approachable, and gestured for him to stand. The child slept nearby, cradled in her arms. "You have done well today," the queen said, her voice calm but filled with meaning. "You have shown insight, patience, and courage. These are rare qualities among your kind. But the path ahead is not simple. There are those who doubt you. There are those who will test you. Are you prepared to meet such challenges? Then you may walk among us not as a guest, but as one whose actions may shape the future of both our peoples." She paused. "And know this, trust is not given lightly. It is earned, but you have earned a beginning." In Elari terms, he had been recognized as someone capable of influence, someone whose heart and mind could match their own in subtle ways. That night, as he looked out over the shimmering city from the balcony of his quarters, Elias reflected on the day's events. Humans often believed they were small and fragile in the vast universe, but moments like this reminded him that humanity's greatest strength was its capacity for empathy, courage, and ingenuity. They could survive and thrive not through dominance, but through understanding, connection, and action guided by moral clarity. The child's laughter echoed softly in the distance, a reminder of what had sparked this trust. Elias smiled, knowing that even the smallest act, calming a frightened child, could ripple outward, shaping alliances, bridging worlds, and creating opportunities for peace. In that quiet moment, he felt a surge of hope. The galaxy was vast, full of danger and wonder, but humanity was capable of rising to meet any challenge. And here, on Elari Prime, the first seeds of trust had been planted. Seeds that could grow into friendship, alliance, and mutual understanding, if nurtured carefully. As sleep claimed him, Elias knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges. Skepticism, political intrigue, and tests of human ingenuity would await. But he was ready, for he had seen firsthand that when humanity acts with courage, empathy, and intelligence, even the most alien and distant civilizations could recognize its value. And somewhere in the shimmering city, an alien child slept peacefully, knowing that a human had kept them safe today. A simple act that would echo far beyond this first day. The morning sun cast a soft glow over the crystal towers of Elari Prime, and Elias Vorn felt a sense of purpose stirring within him. The day ahead promised challenges, as it often did on this alien world, yet he welcomed them. He had learned much about the Elari already, their respect for intellect, perception, and empathy, but he also knew that admiration alone would not secure lasting trust. Action would. The queen summoned him to the central council chamber, a vast circular hall with a floor of polished glass that reflected the patterns of the luminous ceiling. Around the perimeter, Elari leaders had gathered, their tall forms rigid but observant. The air hummed with tension, carrying the weight of expectation. Elias recognized immediately that something serious had occurred. "The energy core of the city is unstable," the Queen said, her voice calm but urgent, translated by the device at Elias' side. "The balance of life here depends upon it. If it fails, the consequences will be catastrophic. We need a solution, and we believe your human perspective may guide us where tradition cannot." To him it looked chaotic, yet there was order hidden within. He knew he would have to rely on observation, intuition, and improvisation, human strengths that could complement alien precision. He stepped forward, moving with deliberate care. "Show me the system," he said. "Let me see what I can do." His mind worked quickly, scanning patterns, noting anomalies, and connecting dots. He did not yet understand the full theory behind the technology, but humans had a remarkable ability to find solutions even without complete knowledge. He crouched before the main control node and began to trace the flow of energy, using hand gestures to adjust the conduits and align the pulses. The Elari watched silently, curious and cautious. They were masters of precision, and yet they allowed a human to intervene. Elias felt the responsibility acutely. One mistake could destabilize the city further. Minutes passed, each movement calculated, each adjustment carefully measured. Slowly, the pulse began to normalize. The hum in the chamber steadied, the lights ceased flickering, and a sense of calm spread through the room. Elias exhaled. "The core is stabilizing," he said, his voice steady. "It's not fully balanced, but it will hold for now." "You have done what many could not," she said. "Your human logic, tempered with intuition, has restored balance." The Elari respected such skill, and he had proven that humans could contribute in meaningful ways beyond diplomacy. The relief was brief. A distant alarm echoed through the chamber, a low vibration that signaled new trouble. An unstable node at the edge of the city was emitting unpredictable pulses. If it continued, it could cascade through the network and undo all of Elias' careful work. "Show me the location," Elias said. He moved swiftly, guided by attendants through a labyrinth of corridors and tunnels. The city outside shimmered in strange hues, as if reflecting the urgency of the situation. He reached the node and examined the energy pattern. Unlike the main core, this node was chaotic, seemingly without order, responding unpredictably to standard methods of correction. Elias frowned. Humans were often valued for their ability to improvise in such situations. He drew on knowledge of feedback loops, energy conservation, and pattern recognition. He watched the node, noting the faint repetitions in the chaos. Even in randomness, there was a pattern. He extended his hands toward the node, synchronizing his movements with the subtle rhythms. Slowly, carefully, he introduced adjustments that the Elari had not considered, combining their traditional methods with his own intuitive techniques. Light pulsed along the conduits, faltered, and then stabilized. The node's energy began to flow harmoniously with the core. A crowd of Elari gathered behind him, murmuring in awe. The Queen stepped forward, placing her hand on the node to complete the alignment. The city's energy stabilized fully, and a wave of calm spread throughout the chambers. Elias straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. It was over for now. "You have saved not just the city, but our people," the Queen said, her voice resonating with approval. "Your actions have shown that humans possess qualities that cannot be measured by tradition or technology alone. Courage, perception, and creativity, these are gifts you bring." They adapted, learned, and acted decisively, often in ways others could not predict. The Queen then gestured toward a balcony overlooking the city. Below, the Elari people moved through their streets, their daily lives carrying on yet somehow altered by the presence of this human among them. They whispered in amazement, noting the bond forming between the human and their ruler. The child, once crying and frightened, now played nearby, occasionally glancing toward Elias with trust and curiosity. As the afternoon passed, Elias was introduced to the council formally. Each member questioned him, testing not just his knowledge but his character. They posed moral dilemmas, scenarios of strategy, and situations of resource allocation. Elias responded honestly, using logic tempered with empathy. He showed that humans could make decisions that balanced immediate needs with long-term consequences, a trait admired even among the meticulous Elari. Some members remained skeptical. One elder, with eyes sharp as a blade, leaned forward. "You are clever, human, but cleverness alone is not enough. What will you do when faced with choices that may cost lives? Will you choose the practical path or the path of compassion? It is not always easy, but it is necessary." This time she spoke privately, her tone more measured. "You have impressed our council and stabilized our systems. Yet the test is not over. Trust is fragile and challenges will continue to arrive. But know this, you have begun to prove what your species is capable of. You are not merely a guest. You are a bridge. I will do my best to honor that trust." Humans, she realized, had a unique power to connect, to act decisively when needed, and to inspire confidence even among the most skeptical. That night, Elias stood on the balcony of his quarters, looking out over the shimmering city. He reflected on the events of the day, the energy crisis, the council's tests, the child's trust, and the queen's recognition. Humans had survived and thrived in a galaxy filled with challenges not because of sheer strength or numbers, but because they could act with intelligence, empathy, and courage. He thought of Earth, of the people who had raised him to understand morality, leadership, and the importance of understanding others. All of that training, all of those lessons, had prepared him for this moment. And here, on Elari Prime, he saw the truth of humanity's greatest strength, the ability to rise to challenges that seemed impossible, to adapt when faced with the unknown, and to act with clarity and heart. The city below continued to hum, lights flickering in harmony with the stabilized core. The Elari moved about their tasks, some glancing upward toward the balcony where the human stood, marveling at his presence. It was a small recognition, perhaps, but significant. Humans could inspire, influence, and shape events without dominance. They could earn trust in ways no force of arms could achieve. Elias allowed himself a small smile. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new uncertainties, and perhaps new dangers. Yet he felt ready. Humans had survived against overwhelming odds on countless worlds, and here they would continue to prove their worth. Through empathy, ingenuity, and courage, they could navigate even the most alien of societies and leave a lasting mark. Somewhere in the soft glow of the city, the child slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that a human had acted with care and intelligence. And that small act of trust, simple as it seemed, had already begun to shape the future of two worlds. Elias knew that this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, and Elari Prime was but one challenge among many. Yet humanity's strength, he realized, was not in domination but in the quiet, steadfast acts that built trust, solved impossible problems, and inspired others. And as he watched the city shimmer beneath the alien stars, Elias felt the unshakable certainty that humans could rise to meet any test, even one that spanned galaxies. The next morning, Elias awoke to a city that seemed both familiar and strange. The light of Elari Prime filtered through the crystal towers, painting the streets with hues of silver and gold. Yet beneath the beauty, there was tension. Whispers of discontent traveled through the air, carried by attendants and citizens alike. Elias could feel it in the hum of the city, a subtle vibration that spoke of unease. Not all the Elari had welcomed him, and some factions were beginning to test the limits of human trust. The queen summoned him to the council chambers, her expression calm but firm. The room was filled with Elari elders, military leaders, and advisors. All eyes turned to Elias as he entered. The queen spoke first, her voice resonant and clear. "There are those among us who question the wisdom of granting trust to an outsider. They have demanded proof of your loyalty and capability. You will face their tests today. Know that these are not trials of strength alone. They are tests of intellect, courage, and judgment. "I am ready," he said, his voice steady. The first test was diplomatic. A faction of the council, skeptical of human motives, challenged him to mediate a dispute between two minor territories within the city. Their disagreement was complex, rooted in centuries-old customs and intricate laws. Elias listened carefully, observing patterns in their arguments, noting their gestures and expressions. Humans were often valued for their ability to see connections where others only saw conflict. He spoke with clarity, respect, and fairness, using both logic and empathy. He proposed solutions that acknowledged tradition while offering new ways forward. The council watched in silence, then murmured approval. The Queen's gaze softened slightly, and even some skeptics began to nod. Elias had passed the first test. The next challenge was strategic. A report arrived of a rogue energy fluctuation near the outskirts of the city. It threatened to disrupt communication networks and destabilize certain districts if left unchecked. Elias was asked to lead a team to investigate and resolve the problem. He moved quickly, accompanied by a small group of Elari engineers. The rogue fluctuation was complex, unlike anything the city's systems had previously experienced. Yet humans excelled in adaptability. Elias observed the problem, noted subtle irregularities, and devised a plan that combined Elari technology with human improvisation. He instructed the engineers to adjust conduits, redirect energy flows, and stabilize the system step by step. Some of the Elari doubted his methods, accustomed to strict procedures, but Elias persisted. Slowly, the fluctuation diminished, then vanished. The network stabilized, and the city's systems hummed in harmony once again. The team looked at him with a mix of awe and respect. The final challenge of the day was physical and symbolic. A faction of the city's protectors staged a controlled test of courage and leadership. They brought a mechanical sentinel, a towering construct designed to simulate threats and test intervention skills. Elias faced it calmly, knowing that fear would not guide his actions. Using intelligence, quick thinking, and precise movements, he outmaneuvered the sentinel, predicting its patterns and neutralizing its simulated attacks. His actions demonstrated human ingenuity, adaptability, and courage in ways that no brute force could replicate. The Elari watchers were visibly impressed. Humans, they realized, were not only clever but capable of rapid problem-solving under pressure, a rare quality indeed. By the end of the day, Elias had completed all the tests. The Queen stood before him, her child by her side, a silent witness to the humans' accomplishments. "You have proven yourself," she declared. "Your intellect, courage, and empathy have passed trials that many of my people could not overcome. You have earned a place among us, not as a visitor but as a protector, advisor, and bridge between our worlds." Elias understood the weight of the title she bestowed. It was more than honor. It was trust, authority, and expectation rolled into one. The council members who had once been skeptical now looked at him with acknowledgement and respect. Some still carried doubt, but even they could not deny the humans' contributions. Humans had a way of earning respect through action, and Elias had demonstrated that humanity's strengths, empathy, ingenuity, and courage were not to be underestimated. Later, as the city settled into evening, Elias walked through the streets with the Queen and her child. Citizens paused to observe him, some whispering, some nodding in quiet approval. He realized the importance of perception. Humans often inspired confidence simply by showing steady resolve, by acting decisively when faced with uncertainty. Today, he had done more than solve problems. He had earned trust. The Queen spoke quietly as they walked. "You have changed many minds today, Elias. Some will continue to doubt, but others will follow your example. Trust, once given, can ripple through generations. You have begun such a ripple." Elias knelt, allowing the child to place a tiny hand on his shoulder. It was a moment of connection that spoke louder than any declaration or title. Night fell over the city, and Elias returned to his quarters, reflecting on the day's events. Humans had survived in countless environments by relying on creativity, adaptability, and moral clarity. Here, on Ilari Prime, those same qualities had allowed him to navigate complex challenges, earn respect, and form a bond with a civilization far older and wiser than humanity. He thought about the Queen's declaration. Being named a protector and advisor carried great responsibility. He would need to balance human ingenuity with respect for Ilari tradition, diplomacy with decisive action, and courage with empathy. It would not be easy, but humans were made for such challenges. Their ability to improvise, adapt, and rise to the occasion had allowed them to thrive even in the harshest environments. The city outside shimmered under the twin moons of Ilari Prime, reflecting light across the crystal towers. Elias understood that the events of the day had lasting consequences. Not only had he proven human worth, but he had also begun to form alliances that could shape the future of both species. Trust, courage, and ingenuity were more powerful than any weapon. In the quiet of his quarters, he reviewed the day's lessons. Observation was crucial, but action was what mattered. Empathy could bridge worlds, and creativity could solve problems that tradition could not. Humans had a reputation for unpredictability, but that unpredictability was also a source of strength. By combining intelligence, moral clarity, and courage, they could face challenges that others could not. He glanced toward the sleeping child, cradled gently by the Queen. The bond that had formed today, between human and Ilari, between outsider and sovereign, was fragile but real. It was a reminder that the smallest acts, calming a child, solving a problem, showing courage, could have immense consequences. As Elias prepared for sleep, he felt a quiet sense of determination. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, perhaps more dangerous than those of today. Factions within the city would continue to test him, and unexpected crises could arise at any moment. Yet he felt ready. Humanity had survived for countless generations, not because of strength alone, but because of the ability to act with insight, empathy, and bravery. Here, on this distant world, those same qualities would continue to guide him. The Queen's final words from earlier in the evening echoed in his mind. Trust, once given, can ripple through generations. Elias understood now that his actions were creating ripples, and that the influence of humanity could extend far beyond what anyone had imagined. By showing courage, intelligence, and compassion, humans could earn respect, shape societies, and build bridges across the stars. And somewhere in the quiet city, the citizens of Ilari Prime moved through their evening routines, whispering of the human who had passed the trials of intellect, courage, and empathy. A ripple had begun, and its effects would continue to spread, touching not only the Ilari but perhaps the wider galaxy. Elias allowed himself a final glance out the balcony. The twin moons reflected in the crystal streets below, casting silver light over the city. Tomorrow would bring more trials, more challenges, and perhaps dangers that could test even his abilities. Yet he felt ready, strengthened by the knowledge that humanity's greatest strengths, creativity, courage, and empathy were recognized here, in a world far from home. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, knowing that he had earned a place among these people. Humans could rise to challenges no one else could face, and today he had proven it. The story was far from over, but humanity's mark on Ilari Prime was already being written, one action, one choice, and one courageous step at a time. The city of Ilari Prime awoke to a quiet tension. The previous day had established Elias Vorn as a figure of respect, a human who had demonstrated courage, intellect, and empathy. Yet the Queen knew that recognition alone could not secure lasting peace. The day ahead promised challenges unlike any before. A sudden, unstable surge in the city's energy core threatened the delicate balance of Ilari life. If unchecked, it could destabilize entire districts, endangering thousands of citizens. The Queen called upon Elias once more, her luminous eyes fixed on him with unwavering trust. "You have proven your understanding of our ways, human," she said, her voice calm but carrying weight. "Now you must guide us through the most difficult challenge yet. The city relies upon your insight." Humans thrived under uncertainty, drawing on ingenuity, observation, and courage. This was a moment that would test all those qualities. "I will do my best," he said, voice steady. "We will restore stability together." The Elari engineers worked frantically, their traditional methods unable to fully contain the surges. Elias studied the patterns, noting irregularities in timing and flow. He recognized subtle repetitions, hidden in what seemed chaotic, a hallmark of problems humans were particularly skilled at deciphering. He gestured to the engineers to step back. "Allow me to try a different approach," he said. He began to synchronize his movements with the rhythm of the energy, using intuition alongside observation. Humans had a unique ability to act in real time, improvising solutions when rigid methods failed. Elias combined careful calculation with creative adjustment, introducing a subtle, counterbalancing pattern that the Elari had not considered. Slowly, the energy stabilized. The hum of the core softened into a steady resonance, the lights ceasing their erratic flickering. The engineers watched in amazement, realizing that the human solution complemented their own knowledge perfectly. The Queen placed a hand on the main node, and the energy flowed harmoniously throughout the city. "You have done what few could," the Queen said, her voice filled with approval. "Not only have you saved the core, but you have also demonstrated the value of insight, courage, and adaptability. Your actions prove that humanity possesses strengths unmatched by many others." A rogue fleet of unmanned vessels, remnants of an old conflict, had approached the outskirts of the city. Their programming caused erratic energy emissions, which threatened to destabilize the very core Elias had just saved. Time was short, and hesitation would be costly. Elias turned to the Queen. "I need to coordinate a defense. This is not just strategy, it's improvisation under pressure. We can use the city systems to guide them harmlessly away from populated areas." The rogue vessels, sensitive to energy fluctuations, were guided along paths away from populated districts, their trajectory controlled without harm. The Elari watched in astonishment as Elias used the city itself as both shield and tool. One by one, the vessels were redirected. Citizens below noticed the smooth hum of their city returning to normal, the lights steady, and the air free of the tension that had gripped them all morning. The final vessel passed beyond the city's protective perimeter, harmlessly diverted. Elias exhaled. Humanity's adaptability, combined with observation and decisive action, had averted catastrophe. The Queen approached him again, her child by her side. "You have proven yourself beyond question, Elias. Today, you have saved not only the city but the lives of countless beings. You are no longer a visitor. You are a protector, a guide, and a symbol of what humanity can offer." Citizens gathered in public squares, whispering tales of the human who had solved impossible problems, who had saved their home through courage, ingenuity, and empathy. Skeptics could no longer deny the value of humanity. Their admiration was now unanimous. Elias watched the child step forward, placing a small hand in his. Trust had been built through countless actions, through moments of care, bravery, and intelligence. The bond was simple yet profound, a symbol of the trust humanity could inspire. The Queen's gaze met his, and in that silent connection, Elias understood that their partnership would shape not only the future of Elari Prime, but also the perception of humanity across the galaxy. The day continued with celebration and acknowledgement. The council members who had once doubted him offered gestures of respect. The Queen held a ceremony, formally recognizing Elias as a protector of her people. The title carried immense responsibility, but Elias accepted it with humility and determination. Humans often rose to greatness not through titles or power, but through consistent, courageous actions. And this was no different. That evening, As the twin moons of Elari Prime reflected silver light across the city, Elias walked through the streets alongside the queen and her child. Citizens lined the walkways, offering nods, smiles, and gestures of respect. Elias realized that humanity's greatest strengths were being witnessed in real time: courage, ingenuity, empathy, and the ability to act decisively under pressure. These qualities inspired trust and admiration, bridging the gap between species. The queen spoke quietly, her voice carrying across the soft night air. "Elias, you have done more than save lives today. You have demonstrated what your people can achieve. Trust, courage, and insight are as powerful as any technology. Humanity has shown us that there is value in collaboration, in action guided by empathy and intelligence. That is what we can offer, not dominance but partnership." The journey that had begun with a simple act, calming a crying child, had grown into something far greater. It was a story of trust, courage, and human ingenuity. He realized that humanity's influence in the galaxy was not determined solely by technology or numbers, but by the capacity to act with intelligence, compassion, and determination in the face of uncertainty. Later, standing on a balcony overlooking the city, Elias reflected on the events of the day. The energy crisis, the rogue vessels, the challenges of diplomacy and leadership, all had tested his abilities, yet humans had risen to the occasion. They had bridged cultural divides, solved impossible problems, and earned trust through action. This was the essence of HFY, humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and moral courage shining even among civilizations far older and wiser. As he watched the city shimmer beneath the twin moons, Elias felt a profound certainty. Humanity had a place in the stars, not because of domination or conquest, but because of the qualities that had allowed them to survive and thrive: empathy, courage, and intelligence. Here on Elari Prime, those qualities had saved lives, earned trust, and built alliances that would endure for generations. The queen joined him on the balcony, the sleeping child cradled in her arms. "Your actions today will be remembered for generations, Elias. You have shown that humans are not merely capable of survival, but of greatness in ways that inspire even the most advanced civilizations. And in that you have shown what all of humanity can achieve. Courage, insight, and heart, these are your gifts, and now they are known across our world." Humanity's mark on Elari Prime had been made not through force, but through wisdom, courage, and the ability to act when it mattered most. The ripple of trust and admiration had begun, and it would extend far beyond this single day. As the twin moons reflected their light across the crystalline streets, Elias stood with the queen and her child, looking toward the horizon. Humanity had proven itself, not just to the Elari but to the universe itself. The story of one human, acting with empathy, courage, and intelligence, had become a story of hope, respect, and alliance. And somewhere in the quiet, the child stirred slightly, reaching for Elias once more. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried the weight of everything that had happened: trust, recognition, and the promise of a future built together. Humanity had left its mark. It was a mark of hope, courage, and enduring ingenuity. The universe was vast, filled with challenges yet to be faced. But Elias knew that humans could rise to meet them, one courageous act at a time. Tonight, Elari Prime slept peacefully, and for the first time in memory, its people dreamed of a future shared with a species that had proven its worth through empathy, intelligence, and heart. Elias allowed himself a final, deep breath, gazing at the stars beyond the city. The journey had been long, the tests difficult, but humanity had prevailed. The queen's trust, the child's quiet acknowledgement, and the city's safety were proof that, when humans acted with courage, empathy, and intelligence, nothing was beyond reach. The story of trust and alliance had been written in action, and it would continue, shaping the future of both species for years to come. As the night deepened, Elias felt the certainty that humanity's light would shine brightly in the galaxy. Their ingenuity, their moral courage, and their ability to act decisively, and wisely had forged a bond with the Ilari that would endure. And in that bond, he saw the essence of HFY, humanity at its best, rising to meet the stars.